Okay, so I apologize for the respondents snafu. So anyway, I think it's fixed. So no one should have a problem doing the syllabus quiz. It's only 6 questions. And I don't like putting the respondents on the syllabus quiz because I'm not really worried about you cheating. What I want you to make sure is you review the information. So I don't know if everybody was in the last class or not, but just a review on the new grading policies. So you miss one, or you're a day late, it goes down 15% all the way down to 0. And if you miss 4 assignments, you can be dropped from the class. But again, if you're having any issues or anything, please let me know right away. And the other part too, as far as, one second, is we don't want you to get too far behind because things build on others, and you guys have been in these courses now. It can get to be a lot. So, don't let yourself get behind. But if you're having an issue, please let me know right away. So let me screen share. Okay, and his last class, the due dates that auto-populated are wrong. So I will fix those. So let's review this week. So we have the getting started module that's due Wednesday. So tomorrow by 11:59, be sure you have those 2 things down. There should be no problems. I did see a lot of people were able to get the syllabus quizzes in. So apologize for that. I've always not had the respondents on there because again, I'm not worried about cheating. It was more for people just to make sure they understand the information and have, looked at it. So we'll talk about executive function. Module 1 is due August 29th, and I will fix the dates. I got to go in and manually change those. Sorry, the college had set it for it to auto-populate, but that didn't happen correctly. So I apologize for that. So there is the module 2 is not due August 29th. It's due the following week. So I will update that. No wonder some people, again, I apologize. A couple of you messaged me or were like, why do we have 2 modules? I said, no, it's just the getting starting module and module 1. I seriously missed the fact that module 2 had the same date. So I apologize for that. And if you were confused by my response. So executive function. So let's talk about this. So this is going to be pretty, I think, review for some of you. Executive function is what I call more of a global term. It's more lots of different parts of our brain is involved in executive function. And why won't it let me move the screen? Okay, and I always do this. I click the wrong button, so bear with me. So executive function. It's how we use what we know and we regulate and change our behavior. So it's how we regulate ourselves and how we regulate ourselves when responding to things around us. So sometimes, we're looking at different environments. So what I do want you guys to know, most of our clients, and this holds true for children all the way to adults, that executive functioning can impact lots of different aspects of our lives. And a lot of what we do as therapists is I don't like ever using the term fix. And I think sometimes people think therapy, if we as speech therapists are addressing an executive functioning disorder or working with them, we are likely working on compensatory strategies to help them. We're not going to fix it, take it away. And it's unrealistic to expect that. Could we expect some progress, some better management, maybe teach some strategies to help improve our executive function? Possibly, but we're not going to, if they have some kind of executive function disorder, we're not going to fix it or make it go away. So that's just a mindset too in therapy. I don't ever like using the term fix because we're likely not fixing things, especially when we're looking at brain functioning and some of those more global aspects of cognition. So exactly. So we like a lot of acronyms. So just to review for those of us, if you see an acronym and you're not sure what it is, please, send me a message. And that's not dumb, because we do use lots of acronyms and sometimes we just take for granted people understand them. So executive function enables appropriate behaviors under novel circumstances. So definitely looking at a person's response to a situation. Now, here are 6 components of executive function. So a couple things I want you guys to remember. A lot of what we talk about, especially in speech therapy, occupational therapy also addresses this, is flexibility, execution, and self-regulation. So oftentimes we see clients who struggle with planning and organization or being flexible. So I don't know if any of you have had an encounter with somebody who's not flexible. I'm sure everyone's had a boss that way. So self-regulation also, how do they adjust themselves? And can we give them the tools to do that? So, and what that looks like for a 3-year-old looks a lot different than for a 12-year-old and as well as a 50-year-old. So oftentimes we're addressing this at all ages, just in different ways. So some factors that affect goal selection. So there's what's their determination or anticipation of outcomes. So oftentimes when we select a goal, it's because we want an outcome. And sometimes the challenge is helping people come up with attainable goals. And definitely, how do you adjust yourself to achieve that goal? And being sure that you can do that goal in a realistic manner. So oftentimes when we work with young kids, and I say children, when I'm saying children, I'm kind of meaning the gamut between, an infant to an 18-year-old. But what happens a lot of times is that when the children have executive function issues, and kids, their executive function doesn't really develop in a way that adults, obviously we don't expect children to have executive functioning control like adults do, but oftentimes there's parental guidance and parental parameters. And ultimately, we always want them to be able to gain the skill to do it for themselves. And this is what I do at a high school. So I work at a high school, and it's a lot of helping kids. Well, my mom's going to do that for me. Nope. How about you do it? Oh, my mom will email the teacher. Nope. How about you do it? Oh, I want to, propose this. I'll have my mom email. Nope, you're going to do it. So a lot of what I do is really kind of coaxing them to learn how to do these things their parents have been doing for them. And honestly, that's true for a huge adolescent population. And so factors that affect planning and organization. So what are the steps necessary to complete a task? So let's say we're working in what we call neuro rehab. And when I'm talking about neuro rehab, this is someone who's usually sustained a stroke, head injury of some type, traumatic brain injury, and are struggling to kind of complete a sequence of tasks. Or no, hey, I want to make lunch, but the steps to get to making lunch might be challenging for them. So we do a lot of like sequence of steps, and then kind of that time management factor, factors affecting initiation persistence. So starting, so you'll see a lot of things like a client will initiate. So that's being able to start without cues. And oftentimes we do this for our clients who might be on the spectrum and other disorders in general, just that initiation of a task. You'll see that goal often. Flexibility, willingness, and ability to adapt to change, allowance for the unexpected, and reaction to change and the unexpected. So a lot of times we're working on, okay, things didn't go the way you thought, can you adjust and change? And also kind of being prepared for the unexpected. So goal attainment, and really a lot of that is self-assessment. Do they have a realistic understanding of what they can do themselves? So sometimes as a therapist, we're working on them, helping to understand their strengths and their weaknesses or limitations, although I don't like to use that word either. We want people, of course, to be realistic of their actual abilities. And so ability of individual to efficiently observe, judge, and monitor, realize completion, react accordingly to events in their world. So really self-regulation. What am I doing? How am I responding to things? So I can say, you know, this pandemic time has definitely helped me reassess my self-regulation. So I think there was so much out of our control, things that were not decided by us, by, you know, the pandemic and other factors. I think rocked all of us a little bit with our own self-regulation, because there's so many things that were just out of our control. So definitely I feel like I see a resurgence of really working on this with my preschool age kids to my high schoolers. I think myself too, I need to work on a little bit of this self-regulation, how I react to the events of the world. So the executive function is controlling our prefrontal cortex, and really looking at that. This is where we make ethical decisions. It's where impulsivity. So if you work with anybody who's had a frontal lobe injury, you should expect that they might have some challenges with impulsivity or you know, emotional regulation, maybe not understanding right from wrong sometimes. So definitely we see that their external behavior within society, social expectations and within society, and then modifying adapting behaviors. So definitely the prefrontal cortex has many jobs. And really, when we look at development, it's really not complete until the mid-20s. So, and there for a variety of reasons, it could be on the delayed end of things. And then also that's the first one to go. So yeah, our lovely brains. So causes of executive function disorders. So we're looking at TBI is a prominent one, and traumatic brain injury is kind of inclusive. Neurological damage to the frontal lobe, and that could be from a head injury, that could be from a stroke, brain bleed, aneurysm. Developmental disorders of many varieties, and other medical conditions. So right now, I've been working with a student who also has all these executive function, had meningitis, pretty severe. It's done a lot of brain damage to him, and he's really struggling with it. And we're working on understanding how that changed him. And, you know, that's not a common one, something I kind of had to brush up on, but just know anything that can affect the brain, you can definitely have some executive function disorder. And oftentimes we should expect them to maybe have some difficulties if anybody's sustained any of these things. So a role of language. Oh, and then I also want to just specify, hold on, sorry, I'll come back to this slide, is neurological damage. So if anybody's had an anoxic event, so near drowning, I don't know, carbon monoxide poisoning, anything that would have prevented oxygen, and so they've had what we call an anoxic event, can have brain damage and neurological. So my nephew had a near drowning, and my sister-in-law is an SLP also, and you know, that's been one of her main concerns for him. She knows he had an anoxic event. It wasn't long. He's young. Hopefully he's recovered. And you know, she's like, it's something on her mind all the time. And you know, we talked about, I just saw them for the first time in a long time this summer. And you know, he seems to be pretty typical for his age. He's young, he's 3. But you know, she's like, oh, all that stuff, you know, neuroscience, it's there because we understand. And I just was, you know, reassuring her, hey, at least you know about it and can recognize it and work on those strategies for it. And just because they've had an anoxic event, doesn't mean they can't recover some of those skills. But definitely what we're always looking for is be aware any kind of trauma to the head, brain damage, usually there's some kind of deficits with executive function disorder. Okay, role of language. So a lot of people are like, why do we work on it? So oftentimes a lot of our cognitive and our cognition is related to language. So role of language, and definitely we use our language to help regulate, express what we need, help us access things to help us. So, and definitely we need that language to learn, to improve our cognition. So definitely that's critical. Okay, so those are kind of the main highlights of executive function. Like I said, it's pretty broad, and probably one of the most prominent disorders with executive function that we talk about is ADHD. So attention deficit or ADD, ADHD inattentive type, I guess is the DSM, the newest DSM categorization. So definitely that's probably the most prominent one you've heard of, but typically other disorders, we see a lot of executive function disorders like autism spectrum disorder, various things with cerebral palsy, depending on where brain damage is. And when we're looking at our adults, our stroke, TBI patients definitely impacts that. And oftentimes we see language difficulties too. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So oftentimes they're related and it's hard to kind of isolate or separate it. We do for diagnostic purposes, but so much of it is interrelated and intermingled. It's really hard to kind of what I call separate it out real nice and neat, because it doesn't, because so much of this does depend on our language skills. Okay, now I'll typically post the recording. So once I record the Zoom, I'll upload it to YouTube, but it usually takes me about 24 hours. So probably you won't see it up there till the following night. So office hours on Tuesday, Wednesday morning, don't expect it to be there quite yet. It's usually up the following evening. We do have an executive function disorders assessment and then a read and review summary. So let's look at that real quick. So look at the 4 resources on the read and review page. What did you learn about executive functioning? So oftentimes I think in general population, we think of executive function as like planning. And that's just one of the 6 components. So just really looking at two paragraph response about executive function. And some people always ask, so I'll just say this here. What if I didn't learn anything new? Okay, maybe you didn't. Maybe you've been studying neuroscience for a while, or your other previous life, you've worked in this with this disorder quite a bit. So that's okay. Just give me a 2 paragraph, and it's nice. What I like about this is something you might want to review yourself for studying. So what are important components of executive function? What are some of the things that are incorporated into that? Where do we see the damage in the brain with that? That's our prefrontal cortex. So kind of always think of your read and review summaries as kind of a nice little summary of studying. So I don't need 3 pages. I'm talking 2 paragraphs. What are the main points that would be good for you to review for a test? So that's kind of, using some of the terminology is kind of nice, putting maybe a definition or 2 in there. I typically ask vocabulary, that's just the SLP in me, we ask vocabulary related questions. What do they mean? So that's usually helpful. So that's kind of what I envision for the read and review summaries, is kind of more for you to kind of have a nice, really short little blurb of information to review for studying. So any questions on that? Okay, now you'll hear a lot about executive function. It's not just solely on speech therapy, any place you work, whether that be in medical setting, home health, school-based, there's usually a lot of people and team members supporting a client's executive functioning skills. So it's just not speech only. So I'll post the recording, and if there's no other questions, that's all. I will fix the due dates tonight for you guys. And yes, Liz, you had a question?
Yeah. Are the tests multiple, or are they multiple questions, or is it where we fill in?
Okay, so typically, large majority of them are going to be multiple choice questions. I usually have one, what I would call short answer. If they're long essay, I'll let you know ahead of time. I will give you the heads up on the essay. And short answer, when I say short answer, I'm looking for a 1 sentence, 2 sentence max. And usually, oftentimes, I'm looking for a particular phrase. I'm not looking for, anything longer than a sentence or 2 as far as, responding to a question. So if it's essay, I usually give you some notice on that. And I usually try to save essay questions for what I would call like our midterm, final, or bigger projects.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Alrighty, so I did review kind of the new grading procedures. So I'll fix the dates, and that's it. So I appreciate you guys joining me tonight. Any other quick questions before we log out?
Yeah, I have one quick question. So the content of these tests, is it coming from pretty much those 2 presentations, the executive function and treatment?
Yes.
Okay.
So typically speaking, I'm not looking for something obscure. Hold on, I didn't even click on the read and review. That's myself. So oftentimes there's usually a lot of people like videos to watch. I like reading. There's additional resources. So what I want to tell you is I usually link kind of the ASHA stuff to it. A lot of what I load up in the read and review is like handouts and things for you for reference. So typically speaking, the most, what I would say, I don't want to say critical or not important, but the main things I would ask you about would be in the presentation. That doesn't mean there couldn't be stuff that's related, but sometimes when you read things that are all related, then it helps you solidify the information. But for instance, like here, so there's treatment, and basically this kind of just a nice summary of therapy. And majority of therapy is more about compensatory strategies. So there is some information in there. It's not what I would say main. So there are some PowerPoints in here, but typically what you're going to see, hold on. This is just the printout of the presentation. So I do try to do that. Hold on. 1 second. Can you guys see that? Okay, remind me if you're not. Sometimes it'll show when I have to stop screen sharing and then reshare. Here's like a questionnaire. This is just something that you might use in a session or to kind of help someone self-monitor. So oftentimes I like to put resources for you guys to keep. And then I do usually always review some of the ASHA stuff. Oh, I hate this because it goes to practice portal. And see, they don't call it executive function. 1 second. It used to go to that exact page, but now it doesn't. 1 second. I'll have to update that. Usually, if you go to traumatic brain injury, they'll talk about executive function. And it used to be just a separate. I might take that out. I don't like that. ASHA did some updates. And for those of you who I hope you all know, ASHA has implemented that national certification for assistants. So we are trying to get you ready for all of that. My SLPA right now, I'm really like trying to coax her into doing the test because we want to meet someone who's taken the test and get more ideas. We have some ideas about it and they've given us some guidelines, but just really like to have a firsthand account. So oftentimes I always want you to refer what's ASHA's like stance or guidelines on these. And there are some things that what I would say, I don't like to say controversial, but differences of opinions. So there are some things that ASHA hasn't endorsed or they have endorsed. So it's always helpful to look at what's their stance on stuff. Well, let me check on this. Let me click on this. And this is SLP215, right? Yeah, we'll talk about TBI, which predominantly for that is executive function disorder. Try to find a better resource on ASHA for you guys. Any other questions? All righty. So Wednesday is due by tomorrow is the getting starting module. Just module 1 is due by Sunday, and I will fix the dates for everybody. Okay. All righty then. Well, thank you guys.